Marshall, thank you for joining me on the Heart Dealer podcast today. We're just going to have a cool chat and talk about you and what you do and all things Hinder. I'm just going to go and we'll see where it takes us. How's that sound?
Cool, man. Well, thanks for having me. First off,
It's my pleasure. Thank you for
pleasure.
taking the time to go through 48 minutes of technical shit in order for us to get here.
Hey, man, I play in Hinder. I'm used to technical difficulties.
Does it come with the job description?
Yeah, man, there's a lot of technical difficulties. Well, in a nutshell, kind of what I mean by that, besides just the obvious thing is that we own our own bus, and so we work on our own bus constantly, and we produce our own music, and we program our own like light shows and stuff like that. So it's an everyday event for Cody and I, especially, to be in some type of problem solving situation like we just had, trying to get this all going. So it's no skin off my back, man. It's I'm used to it.
Cool. I'm just going to let the conversation flow and reorganize my questions as we go. So you're talking about technical problems, and I wanted to talk about your school and essentially what led you to music. But let's focus for a second on engineering because you changed, I believe, what you were doing in school and then went into engineering. Is that accurate? And
Yes, that's
so, what did you do with engineering, and how much of that has like influenced your career?
man. Honestly, I went to school at North Texas, University of North Texas in Denton, and I was a music major for the first 2 years I was there. And when you're a kid, you don't think about money or paying for stuff, but it just dawned on me after 2 years. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to pay all this money back. I was getting some grants and stuff because I had good grades, but I was taking out loans, to pay for my school. And I just, the music program at UNT is great. I would never talk bad about it. It's amazing, but it is primarily jazz based, right? And they cram all this information and learning into you in the first year, the first 2 years that you're there. I think I basically, when I switched after 2 years, I only had four core classes because the majority of they throw you into this music. So you learn really fast about the structure of music, how to manipulate it, how, you learn intervals and then you learn chords and then you learn chord scale relationships and stuff. So, but like I said, the program is primarily jazz based. And I was really into like prog rock and hair metal still too. Like I was trying to be a shredder guitar player, and I was kind of into more modern music. And I just like I said, those loans started to pile up, and I started thinking, man, maybe I should get my if I'm gonna get a degree, I should get it in something that I can fall back on and let music just kind of be my go for it thing. And so that is why I made the decision to switch to electrical engineering, and I ended up getting my degree in that about 4 years later with a lot of summer school and a lot of mini masters. And
Was
then I'm sorry, circling back to your question. So you were asking, do I use that? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Um, I don't. Here's the funny thing about it is I never really got a chance to even look for a job in the engineering world. First off, because when I graduated college, I had this job as a maintenance guy. I was working for an apartment complex, more problem solving, it's constant learning and fixing stuff kind of job. And I was making good money. So I thought, you know what? I've been going to school my whole life. I'm gonna take some time off, work this job and put a band together. And then that band kind of ended up becoming popular in the DFW area, and we ended up getting a record deal. And so I never looked back, man. I've been in the music industry since. It kind of kept snowballing for me, and other opportunities kept popping up and stuff, like working for Hinder and producing music. So, but other than that, as far as like engineering, I think I'm kind of a natural engineer. I'm kind of a natural problem solver. I always was. So I don't know how much of my school I actually use, for this job, but um, I would say it probably gave me a leg up on like learning how to solve problems for myself, at least learn how to figure things out.
Mhm. That makes total sense, and I was going to kind of extrapolate from there. Where, if you went to school for it and electrical engineering isn't what you did for a career, were there things that you learned during that program which then informed your abilities as a producer? Or you mentioned like lighting and the tour bus. Like, are there technical things that you can do and or fix or resolve because of that engineering degree or background?
Well, I mean, like I said, I don't think anything specifically that I learned other than just, well, actually, no, I take that back. Here's a perfect example. So one of our moving lights uh, stopped working randomly. It's spotlights. We have these big mover spotlights that we program, and I took it apart and I took the circuit board out of it and I found a faulty capacitor and I just soldered in a new one. So I would say that yes, I learned that skill in college. So the answer is yes. I forgot about that just yesterday and I put it all back together and it went fired up and it works. And I was like, yeah.
That's a
How
good
many people
feeling.
do that?
It's a good feeling when you put like the effort into something and then get it working again.
Yes, sir, it
Um,
is.
I obviously want to talk about your work in production, but let's go backwards in order to go forward. So, um, Tulia, Texas. You grew up in West Texas. You and I are about the same age, mid 40s. We've both been grinding in this world of music for a while. Um, I like that you have that your family has deep musical roots, kind of like how I shared earlier that mine does as well. Talk a bit more about not your family's deep musical roots, but like when did you really feel that first spark, that first bug where you're like, oh shit, I think music's the answer, uh, and then I'll go from there.
Okay. Well, yeah, I did grow up in a musical family. Everybody was always listening to music and playing, and my uncles played guitar. And my mama was a gospel singer. She has a group called His Image Singers that she's been in for, oh my gosh, since I was a kid. They've probably made like 40 records or something. So she's had a long career. But so I kind of grew up singing, and a lot of that was in church and stuff like that. But just my mom was always listening to popular music too, and country and all kinds of things like that. But I think the moment for me um, was I was kind of already in band too. I was playing saxophone in band. I was pretty good at it. Um, I kind of had a natural knack for that, just for music in general. And when I think I was in seventh or eighth grade, all my buddies started wanting to play guitar and be in a band, and I really hadn't had any interest in that before. I just didn't wanna be the only guy that didn't do it, and so I talked my dad into getting me a guitar, and I got one, and then I just kinda quickly progressed on it, uh, kinda past a lot of the other people that were trying to play and stuff. I kinda had a natural knack for it, I guess, so I think that was my moment. I was, like, really into AC/DC, and I would watch videos of Angus Young, and I just was like, man. After I kind of started getting the hang of guitar, I was like, I kind of think this is what I want to do, and that kind of blossomed throughout my high school experience, I guess, because like I said, I put a band together with my buddies, and I started playing piano, and I can remember playing the Chamber of Commerce banquet. We come from a small town. They're like, "This is cool. Like these young kids playing a band. Let's hire them to play." And I remember us covering some songs like old time rock and roll, and just kind of rocking out for all these Chamber of Commerce people, and it was neat. And so I kind of became known as the musical guy in my high school, and I kind of think that helped support my decision too, because everybody's like, "Oh, well, you're obviously going to do music for a career." And that's always TBD for most people because the music industry is so tough and it's so hard to make a living at it. But it actually worked out for me, and I consider myself blessed. And it's really cool now because I go home and I'm kind of like, everybody's like, "Oh, you did it! You're still the music guy." So it's a good feeling.
Absolutely. You actually led into my next question. You said you go home and you're still the music guy. How important was family to that decision? Did you get a lot of support and encouragement? Do you still get it? Do you talk to me a bit about family and what
Oh
makes you?
yeah. My parents are so supportive. Like they were, well, I lost my dad. My dad died in 2017, but he was always 100% behind me. He always supported me, bought me instruments. He encouraged me even when I was falling on hard times when I would kind of be in between production gigs or I was kind of scraping by. He would loan me a little money. He's like, "Here, don't quit. Here's here I'll pay you rent this month. Like keep getting after it. And of course, my mama, she's like, I love her. She's always been super supportive because she's a musician herself, so she understands. She's a singer. She's been one her whole life, so she just there's no way she couldn't, not support me, and she's very proud of me. So I've been very blessed. My family, in fact, my whole family, my sister, all my aunts and uncles. I've never had one person in my family, you know, turn up their nose to the idea of me pursuing music. So I've been very blessed.
That's amazing. Good for you for having support. I think is really important with achieving our goals in the long run. Ultimately, it's us, right? Like we have to stay focused and we have to encourage ourselves. But if we have people in our corner, even better. Do you have family of your own, wife, kids, anything like that?
No, I didn't go
What?
down that road.
Not yet or
Well,
never?
well, man, I was with this girl for about 15 years, uh, and we just decided that we didn't want to have kids. She didn't want kids, and I was like, my life is kind of chaos. I'm gone a lot. I'm not around. It's not really the right time, even if I did want to have kids. And so I'd kind of thought, I don't really want to do that. But then I ended up splitting up with her in about 2021 or two, and I started dating this much younger girl who wanted children, and I realized at that time that I didn't, and that was one of the a big strain upon our relationship, amongst many other things that come along with dating someone 17 years younger than you.
Yeah.
And so I kind of decided then, and I ended that relationship, and I've just been cruising without that in mind ever since, and it feels good. I don't think I want to have a kid at 47 years old. Although I have the side project that I do that's kind of like a guitar nerd thing. It's just a trio where I just kind of do shred guitar. It's called Gunfighter's Dilemma, and w- the guys I play with in it are a little older. The drummer's in his 50s, but the bass player's in his 70s, and he had a kid I think at like 47 or 48, maybe even 49. And he's like, oh man, you could do it. He did it. His kid's in college now. And I'm just like, I don't know if that's for me. I'm not the music industry isn't as financially stable as what he did to support his family all those years. So I think I'm going to stick to the no kids thing, man.
No, no shade either way. Just curious. I mean,
How about you? Do you have kids?
I do. I have two of my own with my ex. She's an amazing woman, and thankfully together we created these amazing little humans. And the girl that I'm seeing now, she's 10 years younger than me. She's got two of her own as well. And God decided to get us pregnant. So we have another little bundle coming.
Well, congratulations, dude.
Thank you. So there's gonna be 5 kids in our household, and thankfully it's not full time, it's half time, but it's complete chaos. It's complete chaos and it's good, but it's funny, I growing up, I always had a really solid relationship with my dad, and he's, exactly 30 years older than me, and I always felt like that was the age gap that I needed to have, and so when I finally had my first kid, I was much older, and, I was stressed about it. I was stressed about being an old dad, and then I found out or realized that his dad was the same age gap with him and he that I am with my son. And I said, okay, well, they had a tight relationship, and so I can easily have a tight relationship. And then this other kid that's happening now happened. I'm 45, and I had the same stresses. And as luck would have it, I was having a conversation with none other than Mr. Jolin Turner, and he's like, "Yo, I'm in my 70s and I have a 2-year old," and I
What?
immediately felt so relieved. Thank you, Joe. I was so relieved
That's
because I
crap.
felt like I can do anything, and it's all state of mind if we take care of ourselves and whatnot. So you're saying that now, but maybe if older Marshall has got kids.
Hey, dude. I'm not gonna say no to anything. I know better than to do that.
Um,
I'm not gonna say never. I mean, that's what I meant to say.
yeah, no, fair. Um, well, so speaking of our age and where we are in our lives and careers, what do you do for health and fitness? You know, like to keep your body and mind sharp, and not to mention your voice, right? Like especially on the road and with that. Do you have anything that's part of your routine?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been a jogger my whole life. I'm still a runner. I can still run a 7 minute, 20-second mile. You
Wow.
know, on a good day, I can run at seven. Sometimes, but I generally average between 7 and 7:30 per mile. But I do that, and then I kind of mix in between. I'll run like every other day if I'm gonna work 5 days a week, and then I'll lift weights and do things like that in between to try to and then I just try to eat really healthy. That's one of my newest things is just trying to eat really like low calorie but really high quality, food just for nourishment. And it seems to be working, man. I feel better than I have in a long time. The only problem is just not reaching for a beer every night. That's the that's the trick. But that's the chore for me. But other than that, man, if I avoid the booze, man, I feel great for my age. I feel like I'm in probably some of the best shape of my life right now, actually.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel the same way. I'm not very good with running. If I were the soldier, I'd be more of the strap the thousands of pounds and then tell the guy to just march. I can march forever. I'm like a camel or a stubborn donkey. You know, I'll just march forever. But you ask me to run a 7 minute mile and I'll kill you. I don't want to do that.
Oh man, like speaking of all that, was like I don't know what made me think of this, but you talked about like military guys wearing those packs. I was out at Cody's dad's house. Is where we keep the bus and we go work on it. Sometimes out there. And I was out there the other day, and he was like, he was going through this old box of stuff, and he found an old disarmed grenade.
No way.
And he's like, "Have you ever felt one of these?" And man, they are so heavy. We were just sitting there talking, thinking about like how grueling that must be, wearing all this gear, like all these clips full of buttons, and then like 10 grenades on you. I mean, it's like that's got to be like some of the best exercise in the world right there, because that stuff weighs so much.
Yeah, I agree. I can't say from experience, but I got friends in and around military or even services in the US, and they have stories, that's for sure. So health, fitness, important part of the regimen. It's funny you mentioned booze. Like I think everyone has at some point some kind of vice, some kind of thing. And for me, booze was actually a big thing for a while, where I felt like I couldn't go a day without at least a couple drinks or something. And my life changed heavily. You know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, when my ex and I split, started to adopt new mindset and all kinds of different things, and really examine myself and try to better myself so that I can be a better person for my kids and for my team and for anyone that I'm, in touch
I
with.
know.
And two things kind of really started to stick out. One was fasting. Like I really discovered fasting, and that's been really helping me with my health and with calories, like stopping at a certain time and then just starting the next day. I always had this vision in my mind that fasting was like, don't eat for 3 days. And I was like, what idiot does that? And it's really
Right.
just about achieving a certain amount of time without eating. I think they say 12 hours minimum is like the goal, and then from there it gets better. But then with the booze, what I discovered, and I'm just putting this out there for anyone that cares, is switch the mind to high end. And if you study minimalism, minimalism isn't about less, less, less. It's also about quality over quantity. So if I love scotch. I mean, I have this unfortunate ability to drink a bottle of scotch like it's nobody's business. You too?
Yeah,
So
man.
I have this threshold now where if I'm going out and I'm buying a bottle, I set a minimum purchase price of like $200 to $300, and then I will feel super guilty if I have more than one drink. So now when I sit down, I not only will not have more because I know how expensive it is, but I actually enjoy it more because of how good it is.
That's an interesting technique, man. I love that. I'm gonna put that one in my pocket, dude. I've kind of
Okay.
been more of a bourbon guy lately, but I go through phases where like I drink a lot and I drink every day, and then when I get serious about getting in shape, like, you know, right after Christmas this year, right at the beginning of the new year, I'd put on some pounds through Thanksgiving, and I
Mhm.
was like, man, I gotta lose some weight. So, I'll kind of buckle down and I'll just kind of stop drinking. Either that or I'll just, I'll have a glass of wine here and there every once in a while, and just lay off the heavy stuff for a while, and stop. Try not to binge drink, but I don't know. I live a crazy life, and it's gonna happen here and there. It's hard to avoid. I mean, it's Hinder, dude. It's like the ultimate party band. That's what they were always known as.
Yeah. I mean,
I wouldn't say we're still that, but
it's a different lifestyle though. I mean, the people I think having done a lot of interviews and been in and around musicians for 20 years, people don't realize on the other end that there are there is so much grind. There's the press, there's talking to idiots like me, there's like doing the tour bus, there's sleeping on the bus, there's like weird hours because you come off stage and there's adrenaline and you got to get on the bus. And so I can only imagine that it's part of the routine because you're trying to stay composed. And
it is, and it's the ultimate social lubricant. But actually, in the past couple of years, though, I've kind of switched to where, I used to we used to drink a lot on the road and come home and dry up, a little bit for a little bit. But it's almost the opposite for me now because I'm getting older and I can't drink that much. Otherwise, my voice starts to go really quick.
yep.
I might put a little whiskey in some warm water to get warmed up in the night. But then, when the show's over, that's it. I'm done. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm usually straight to bed. I keep it tight. But then I come home and I'm like, tour's over, man, and I'll just binge drink for like a week, and then I'm like, okay, I have to have a, I have to have a come to Jesus with myself. Be like, listen, bro, you can't keep this up. We still have stuff to do.
Yeah, like we got to figure out the laptop and talk to this guy.
Yeah, but you got to blow off steam every once in a while. You can't keep it always rigid and perfect. So
Yeah. It's funny, like, and I'm sure you felt this at times, but like the older you get, the more you know, the wiser you are, the more you also realize that you don't know anything. And really the goal is to just keep learning and growing. But that whole, I think it was Rocky adage about it's not how hard you can get hit, it's how fast you get up. That's what I'm learning through therapy and all the different things. I'm realizing, oh man, like this is not about being the best you can be and being perfect. It's about learning the tools and having more tools so that every time you fall off, you can just get back on faster. And then
I
your
love
core
that.
is a little straighter, right?
Yeah, man. I'm gonna put that in my pocket too, man, because that's I'm glad you brought that up because that is one of the things I struggle with is like just getting back around to getting in a routine quick. After I come off the road, sometimes I'll burn a week, just kind of like I said, binge drinking when really I just need to come back, have one day at it, and then back to business. Back to the eating healthy, back to the exercising, and so I'm gonna work on that. Thanks, dude.
You know what'll help you with that? Little fuckers running around everywhere. Somehow you don't have time for hangovers and for not being on routine.
Well, I'm gonna try a few other techniques first before I try that one out, but I'll let
Deal.
you know.
All right, let's rewind and then continue forward to what you have going on right now. But you're in the we talked about this a bit. You're in the 90s. You're like in music and you're doing things with friends. And I believe that you had a band called Carb, and then you go to university and you meet other guys, and all of a sudden you're in faction. Which I mean, keep me honest here, but I think it was like a year-ish after or a couple years after faction started, you had a demo and then Roadrunner heard it and then Roadrunner signs you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, man, that's let's see. So we started Faction around like 2002, I think, or 2003, and we ended up going. Well, so my bass player in Faction, this guy named Jeremy Cohen, uh, was a cousin of the singer from this band called Submersed.
Yeah.
His name's Donald Carpenter, and they had just signed. I can't remember what the management's name was, but they got signed to Wind Up. And so their management team, we kind of had an in there, and their management team was like, "You guys are a really great band. You should go out to Florida and get a demo or, record some songs with this guy named Brett Hestla." And I don't know if you know who Brett Hestla is, but he was he got his start in a band called Virgos Merlot, but he's one of those just all around talented guys. Uh, he played bass for Creed for a while. You know, one of those guys that's kind of always been involved with all these different bands. One of his big projects was Dark New Day that he
Okay.
was in with some of the Seven Dust guys. You remember that? He was
Yep.
the singer of that band, and but he's also a really talented guitar player, producer, songwriter. I mean, he's just the whole deal. And so I'd never really been produced by someone and you know properly recorded at that point in time somehow. You know, I'd only been in the studio a couple times, maybe once with Carb, and I went out there and I just fell in love with the whole studio process because Brett was this fascinating person that made it really easy and fun, and we recorded some great music with him. And then you know their submersed management signed us. That we had the same management team, and they started chopping us around. And he had a contact. I think he knew Ron Berman over at
Yeah.
Roadrunner, and he gave it to Ron, and Ron was like, "Man, you know, he loved the music right away." And he was like, "Oh, you guys come out to, you know, New York, and we'll do a showcase." And so we drove. We loaded up, dude. We loaded up in a Suburban in a trailer and drove all the way from Texas to New York City. Bunch of kids. We'd never been to New York City. You know, I'm driving around a van in a trailer because they told us to bring gear. And so we get there, and they're like, "No, you can't bring a trailer and a Suburban in here." And we're like, "You said we could park here." And they're like, "We didn't know you had a trailer and a Suburban." So we ended up parking like, you know, 90 blocks away for $125 a night. And then we go to the showcase the next day at CBGBs. And I guess that's what it's, yeah. And then they were like, "No, you got to use the, you know, the house gear." So it's like, well, so we pulled this trailer and all this gear for nothing, right? And we're playing on borrowed gear, and our style's terrible at this point, dude. I mean, we all kind of look like idiots, dude. I had like long blonde hair, and I don't know what I was thinking, dude. I mean, we didn't have our style together, and we played this showcase, and I remember sitting at the bar talking to Ron. I was like, so what's up, man? What do you think? And he's like, "Man, I love you guys' music, but you're a terrible band." He's like, "You guys are terrible. You don't have your look together. Like, you just look green." He's like, "Go away and go get some experience and come back. You know, holler at me again in a year or something." So you know, we kind of went home with our tail between our legs. It's kind of a little heartbroken. Like, man, we blew this.
Yeah.
This was a big opportunity we blew, but. You know, he somehow stayed on the line. He actually ended up calling our management back, I think about 6 months later, and he was like, "You know, I got all these things on my desk," and or this is what they told me anyway. I didn't hear this out of Ron's mouth, but he was like, "I got all these things that keep coming back to Faction, so I'm gonna give it another shot." And so they actually ended up coming out to see us in our hometown. We used to play at this club in Deep Ellum, uh, and you know, it was kind of our hometown crowd. We had it there. The sound was good. They came out. We got the deal. It was done. You know, so it was kind of one of those just ah, you know, we made it. You know, you get your first record deal, you think you've made it. You know,
Yeah.
it's the best thing ever. You know, somebody gives you 15 or 20 grand, and you're like, woohoo! And then next thing you know, you're broke and getting dropped.
Well,
So,
fair enough.
welcome to the music industry.
Before we move forward to like broken dropped, I mean, Roadrunner was just like on fire at that time with the bands they were signing and like the cold
Yeah, they had
Chains and
Slipknot,
Slipknot. I mean, Monte Conner,
Nickelback.
it was just signing bands like crazy and doing really well. And I have a good friend who's at Warner now, who was also at Roadrunner before Warner acquired Roadrunner. Um, and yeah, man, the amount of shows we used to hit up that every band is like, I've never heard of this band. And it was just like every band, no matter what, was just on fire. But how did it feel like to be courted and signed by such a prestigious label so quickly? It must have been like such a cathartic moment.
I mean, it was awesome. It was so cool, man. Everything kind of happened so fast, and it felt like things tend to, you know, feel like the stars were aligning, and you know, this is our shot, man. This is gonna happen, and uh, you know, and those kind of situations, it's yeah, everything has to happen just right. You have to all the stars have to line. You have to have the right management. You have to have the label, and they've got to believe in you. And then the band has to be really successful. And then, all the radios and promotion kind of things, people and meetings have to go just right, and everything has to be in line. So and I didn't know that then. I thought like, this is it, man. How can we mess this up?
Mhm.
But there's a lot of gray, there's a lot of gray area in there, in those dealings with label and kind of getting your feet wet and learning what actually how the music industry works. And I was just kind of a green kid that came from a small town in Texas, and I went to university, and I met a bunch of people there, but I still consider myself at that time just thinking back to my mindset and who I was then. I was still kind of a really naive, just kind of people pleaser type of person. And a lot of people in the music industry are, you know, the type of people that can recognize things like that and take advantage of it. So
Yep.
there was a lot of I had a lot of mixed feelings, because I'm pretty savvy. I can tell when people are whether or not I led on to it. I can kind of tell when people are, taking advantage or kind of blowing smoke up my ass. And I kind of started getting that feeling here and there, and I was just like, this is tough. This is a tricky industry. It's not going to be as easy as you think it is by just getting a record deal. So I remember having those feelings, but I also remember being really excited and hopeful. And I
Mhm.
was meeting all these people, and um, you know, people I'd looked up to. I was meeting. You know, I was. That's one of the coolest things about this industry is like it's like if I could go back and tell my 16-year-old kid that I'm like, oh, you're gonna hang out with Kevin Martin someday and be on tour with him. It's like I'm like I would blow my mind, as a kid because I was listening to Candlebox in high school. So it's it's full of those moments of like just pure joy and just starry eyed wonder, and then also with those creeping feelings of like, this is a dirty business, and
Yeah.
this is there's a lot of things I'm gonna have to learn, and I'm gonna have to get a thick skin really fast. And I mean, they were giving us kind of interview prep and media prep and telling us not to say, I kind of had this hick accent. It kind of goes away. It comes and goes, because I'm from West Texas, so it comes in and out. But I can remember Ron being like, "Can y'all stop saying badass and stuff like that?" And that kind of stuff would just make me feel stupid and self conscious. I'm like, God, does everybody think I sound like a hick? Like I'm some idiot. I'm not. But I kind of I had self conscious issues. I think for a long time until I got a little more confident and uh, had a little more experience and had experienced some disappointment and some more ups and downs, and realized that like, man, things can go down as quickly as they can go up, and then they can go right back down again, so
Yeah.
it's a sine wave.
I feel you. Um, One of the companies we have, V13 Promotions, is an artist development agency in every sense of the word. We're mostly working with young artists, and we're developing them from a ground up. And they're always focused on the rocket ship. That's the terminology we use, and I bring them back to earth and say, listen, we have to build a foundation first. You can't take off before there's a launch pad. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that goes into tilling the soil and getting things ready for foundation. The thing that I always hear still, even with all the stories and prints and masters and labels, I still hear so often like, "Oh, I just want to get signed, and if we're only signed, then we would be big and this and that." Like, what do you, with 25 years experience and being through this, industry for so long? I was going to say ringer, but it didn't feel nice. Being through the ringer, what do you say to these artists that are like, "Oh, I just need a deal."
I mean, man, I would say like, don't worry about it. Just you just got to get to the grind, man, and put your nose down and hustle. You could do it these days just as easy. I mean, it always helps having support, but I feel like out of all the record deals I've been involved with and then moved on from, I've always I feel like I enjoyed the times in between a little more where somebody wasn't, telling me what to do or what direction to go in. And Cody and I found that out, especially as producers and songwriters. That's like, uh, it's really nice to just be creative and be who you are without having somebody telling you, oh well, we need something that sounds more like this, or you guys need to be heavier. This sounds too pop or something. It's like, well, we'll just why don't we just release whatever the hell we want, and then if the fans like it, they like it. If not, whatever, that's their choice. And so I I definitely would say that the record deal isn't an end all be all, and in fact, you realize how much money you lose
Mhm.
and how much you can be taken advantage of in that kind of thing. But on the plus side of it, when you do have a good team from a label that's supportive and everyone works hard, it's like it can be one of the most amazing experiences of your life, and it can go really well.
Yeah.
So, to answer your question, it's not the end all be all. You don't need a record deal to be successful in the music industry. A lot of people are not, and a lot of people have gone more independent. But with independence comes more work and more responsibilities,
Yep.
that fall on your shoulders that you've got to take care of and you can't ignore. And I've been fortunate enough, even in between times, especially with Hinder, when we've been in between deals. The band's such a working band, and Cody's brilliant at so many things. He's always got his hand in all the different aspects of everything, and it's I've been really fortunate to be around people like that and learn from
Hmm.
that are hustlers and not scared to get in and learn a bunch of different things and do a bunch of different aspects of this industry because that's one thing that was hard for me is learning all the other responsibilities. Like, I'm really not that great at social media, and that's kind of a downfall for artists. And so that's a struggle for me because I just like producing music, writing music, and recording it and performing it. But you don't always have that luxury these days. That's
Yeah.
not. I've been fortunate enough to be surrounded by people that are really good at the other things, and I've learned how to do a lot of this stuff from them, and that's that's something that I don't know if I was around those people, if I would be, I mean, I would say no. I definitely probably wouldn't be as successful as I've been fortunate enough to be today without that. So, but there's so many people these days that have that whole side of it down, and
Yeah.
you know,
You
forget to
said,
focus on the music side of it. So, I mean, it's a mixed bag, but you just got to look around and learn from people, man. That's really the best way is just seeing and doing. And being in the mix, going to shows and being around these people and being in the being around the people in the industry, you learn so much more that way than you do from having a record deal, I would say.
I totally agree. It's like having a university degree versus having job experience, right?
Mhm.
It's similar. You said a lot of things that I totally agree with in terms of grinding and hustle and
Yeah,
family or
you
team.
do it.
I totally agree. I mean, it's in life, in a house, in a business, in a band. It's about the family. It's about the team. If you have a good team that have a unified vision and who all bring different elements or different specialties to the table, then your end product, your end team is stronger. And then I think it's less about the deal or record deal or however you want to phrase it, and more about the team that you choose to work with, right? So you're
Yeah,
amazing, your musicians are amazing, you're creating great stuff, you know how to produce, and then you get to certain roadblocks where you're like, okay, no one knows social, how are we going to do this? No one knows PR, how are we going to do this? Find the right team that can be the experts in other areas to then take the creative effort that you've put forth to a wider audience.
that's great. You said it so well. That's great advice
How do you
for
agree?
any young budding musician. There you go, kids.
um, quick step back before we go into production and then Hinder. So you're having success with faction, and then Ryan Gibbs, I believe, joins. and then he becomes the lead singer. So I was just curious about like, and I'm going somewhere with this later in the chat, but how did it feel to be in a spot and then kind of moved out of that spot?
At the time I wasn't really I've never been like a super confident vocalist. I've always had room to grow there, and back then, I mean, I've always loved singing and I loved doing it, but I actually didn't really mind then. We kind of made that decision as a band. It, in Faction, there was a lot of like kind of more intricate guitar playing going on,
Hmm.
and I started to realize that, and the other guitar player is a great guitar player, Josh Franklin. He's phenomenal rhythm player, but I was kind of handling a lot of the lead stuff because that's kind of my forte. Um, as a guitar player, and it was getting really difficult to sing some of the stuff and then also play some of the stuff that I wanted to play. And Brian was a good friend of ours, and he was in some other bands, and I always thought he was great. And he started coming around, and he was like, "Man, I don't." And I would be like, "Dude, your band's awesome. You sound great." He'd be like, "I don't care. I want to be in Faction." And he kept saying that. He's like, "I want to be in your band." He's like, "Let me do it." And so, I remember when we were first trying to shop around, management, they were like, the singer could be better. It's like I wasn't really up to snuff quite yet as a vocalist, I would say maybe. And so we had that suggestion from management and stuff too. And so I took it pretty easily. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look at this as a positive. Like I can get this guy, Ryan Gibbs, in my band who's also a phenomenal writer. Like he's one of those guys that you can just you can play a riff for and he just immediately starts singing and he's already got like a whole like lyrical thing he just makes up on the spot. He's one of those guys. So he's a real good idea guy. He makes for songwriting really fun. But he was also very open to songs that I write. He'd be like, "Oh, this song's amazing," and he would immediately like attach onto my songs and make them his own,
Hmm.
and so it was this really big team effort in Faction. It was uh, everybody. We kind of made decisions all together. We kind of treated it as an equal team. So it kind of just felt like we were adding another really valuable member when we got him. And I stepped aside, and it allowed me to focus more on some of the guitar stuff I wanted to do. And then I still got to sing a whole lot because I did all the harmonies and all the background stuff. I mean, some of the other guys sang too, but I did most of it. And so I had some like lead parts and stuff too. So I still got to sing a lot, but I also didn't have the extra weight of being the front man. So it worked out good for me. It was a good at the time for me. It was a good switch.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny how in sometimes in life you got to take a step aside or take a step back in order to find your proper course forwards.
Mhm.
So do you think that was instrumental to you then evolving as a musician and then finding your path forward as a producer and vocalist full time?
I think absolutely, man, because as a people have always kind of been drawn to like my guitar playing. That's the thing people notice about me, or they did then back in the day. And so like right when we got our Dylan, we were out on the road. Uh, that's how I became friends with a lot of people who provided opportunities for me later just because they were fans of the way that I played guitar. It's like I remember all the Hinder guys would be like, "Oh, dude, we love the way you play guitar." They would single that out about Faction. That's what they liked the most about it. I don't even in fact, I don't even think they really cared for, like, you know, some of the other aspects of my band, but
Mhm.
they really always loved that, and that led me to working with Cody. Would be like Cody would always ask me to, "Hey, come write some songs with me or come out on the road with us and let's record some demos and stuff." That was later on. I'm kinda jumping ahead of myself, but
No,
I
that
think that position was really good for me at the time, I guess, to answer your questions, because it it allowed me to um, present myself with my forte, you know, right out there in front of everyone, and so it uh, it made me more recognizable, I think.
mm. And you ironically kind of went where I was going to go with this. A lot of people don't know that this transition period, like when you left that band, when you left Faction, before you were full time with Hinder, there was this whole producing thing that started, and you in fact were actually helping with the production of I think three separate Hinder albums before you even joined as a lead singer. So how did you meet the guys, and how did that transition happened before you joined the band, just into the production world and working with them?
Well, so I kind of started producing, you know, when I brought up Brett Hestla, I was a really big fan of him, and when I worked with him in the studio, I just by the end of our time working together, he ended up producing the co-producing the first uh, Faction record with this other guy named Justin Thomas, and I fell in love with just being in the studio. He made it really inspiring for me, and uh, I just kind of wanted to do that. I was like, I kind of want to do what you do,
Hmm.
Brett. That was what I took away from that. And so even before Faction ended, I had kind of started my journey producing music. I'm like, I want to do this part of it myself, and I want to be able to record myself, and now I want to be able to produce songs, and I want to do this for other people too. I love being in the studio, and so I kind of started off on that journey with Faction. And then, after Faction got dropped, Cody managed us for a while. He was kind of interested in management. Like I said, he had his hand in it. He was trying to get his hand in everything because that's the type of person he is. He's like, I'll try my hand at managing. So he kind of started managing Faction. Ryan left the band, and we got a different singer. Uh, and through that process, I was recording my band Faction and sending him uh, demos and stuff. And Cody would be like, "Where are you recording this stuff at?" I'm like, "I just bought a little Pro Tools rig, and I'm in my apartment over here, dude." And he's like, "Really?" He's like, "Can you bring that out on the road?" And I was like, "Yeah, man. I need a case for an iMac because that's what I had at the time." And he his I remember his tour manager at the time just mailed me this giant flight case for my iMac, and I put all my stuff in there and showed up at a Hinder tour, and I spent the man, I'd say the better part of the next year out on the road with Hinder. And that's where Cody and I got our production company name is Back Lounge Productions because we set up my Mac in a back lounge and we turned it into a studio. And so he and I, like every day off, we're in the back lounge all day working on music. And every night after the show, we'd work, and I would work all day and edit and stuff. And so I feel like while we were out on the road in that year, we ended up, man, we recorded like 40 to 60 songs. There was so many like songs that they wrote in preparation for the uh, All American Nightmare record. So that was the first one that I was a part of. And I was very familiar with all the songs because I produced all the demos. Cody and I did it together in the back lounge of the bus. And then we actually ended up doing that record with as co-producers with Kevin Turco, who is also an amazing producer. I loved working with Kevin, learned so much from him. So I was really fortunate to get to work with several really good producers and learn a lot of the tricks, here and there, just by watching these people and being involved so heavily in the studio. Because I was, after I did it, I was kind of one of those guys where I'm hooked. I'm never leaving. Like the bass player comes in, records his stuff, and he's then out there playing, you know, Madden football or something. Guitar player comes in, he's gone. They go to the bar. I'm in there the whole time. I'm in there watching the guys edit. I'm doing it all. So I just I just fell in love with the whole process, and so it was easy for me to spend 14-hour days just doing nothing but that back then. And so that's how I got involved with Hinder, though, was simply through the fact that Cody was managing my band and I was making recordings. And Cody was really interested in producing and learning how to be a really good audio engineer as well. So we kind of picked it up and learned together and taught each other, and we became a team that way. And that's what I mean. There's a lot of time in between there where he and I produced a bunch of other stuff, and we would do stuff ourselves. We would write, different styles of music. We would, try our hand at rapping, and then we'd like write some country songs and record those, and then, you know, do some weird alt rock stuff. And it was just a really period of growth for me over those couple years working with Hinder before I was in the band, where we just kind of nailed down production, and specifically I focused on that, faction. I stopped faction because I was really interested in this, and my goal at that point in time was not to become a singer or part of. I mean, I sang in the studio all the time,
Yeah.
sang on all the demos. I did all the harmony. I did a lot of harmony singing, but it wasn't my goal to be a touring musician again. I wanted to be a studio guy, and then somewhere along the line that changed, and I found myself in this job. That's a different story.
That's awesome. I appreciate the history, and it's funny because you kind of like reaffirmed what you were saying before, where to the young ones out there, like you just gotta fucking take the risk and do it, and you gotta learn, and you gotta grind, and you gotta never think you know better. And even if you think, like, even when you are the best, keep learning, keep changing course. So it sounds like it's a lot of hustle that's gone into where you are now. It wasn't. I mean, sure, there's an element of luck for all of us, but there's also hustle.
Yeah, man. It's one thing I can say about it is like when you get tasked with like learning a new piece of software or something, especially like a DAW, digital workstation, like Pro Tools or something. Those things seem really overwhelming at
Mhm.
first. But, we would spend 14 hours a day just trying to figure stuff out and Googling everything we can, and just reading every article I can on like how to be a better producer and how to do this and how to do that, and, figure out how to figure things out, if that makes sense. You have to be good at figuring out how to figure things out. And
Mm.
even if it takes you a month to learn something, well, then spend a month and do it. If you're fortunate enough to be able to do that, that's which I was. So I'm blessed. I realize that can be a burden for some people, is, working a second job and doing all this stuff. You don't have all this free time, but
Yeah.
you can find time to do anything that you set your mind to.
Amen. You're not allowed to reuse the same lessons, but what would you say is like one of the most key lessons or best things you've learned in your production career so far, like being a producer to aspiring producers out there?
Um, I mean, once again, persistence, man. Just like our technical issue, it's I don't know that, and just in listening to different styles of music and trying your hand at different things, exercising your creative uh gene, like just in the creation of music, even if you're using digital music, or some synth pads. Just, I mean, mess around with different stuff and see what you can come up with, and see if I remember at one point in my career just trying to see if I could recreate, another recording, and see if I could do that well and get good sounds. That was one aspect. And then I would say like, let me see if I can write something and produce something similar to this, and and that, and like, I mean, one of the biggest things that that changes, that any producer will tell you, is like you got to A/B, man. You got to compare your stuff constantly to everybody else's stuff, and that's how you learn and you mold and you shape your ear, and learn what's good and what's not. And that, and just a lot of research, man, a lot of research and a lot of study, and just, but it's if it's something you love, studying comes easier, but that doesn't mean it's always easy. Some of these things are a huge headache, and there's not
Yeah,
a lot of information on how to figure some of these things out. But once again, persistence, man. If you want to be able to to do it, and you're just persistent, one of these times you're going to get it, even if it takes you 5 or 10 years.
100%. And man, I lost my train of thought, but
Oh,
it's okay because
oh,
I got another.
another thing about producing is it's like playing an instrument. You get better and better at it. It's not like you get there and now you got it.
Yeah,
The more you do it, you still learn new stuff. I learn new stuff every day I'm in the studio. So that's it's a journey. It's There's no real end game there other than that you just want to keep doing it.
For sure. It's about passion. And what I was going to say is that it's nothing worth having comes easy, right? Like if you really want to be a rock star and have that lifestyle, then you have to be prepared to put in all of the other dues that come along with it. Same as being an entrepreneur or a family person. Like there are hard times and you have to get through those things. But the more you do, the more you learn, the more you grow. And that's actually one of the things I've learned over the last year is that I remember saying to one of my therapists, like, my God, life is just pouring it on. When am I going to get a break? This is so brutal. And she was like, well, it's not about getting a break because your life's never going to get easier. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, you're expanding, and all you're doing right now is getting better equipped to handle what life is happening or giving to you. And then you're going to learn those skills, and then life will be easy. But then life will level up again, and then you will go through that same process of
I love it,
constant.
man. That's beautiful.
But
That's so true, man. That's everything in life is compounding.
yeah,
It's a snowball, man. It's gonna keep rolling and it's gonna keep gathering. And you just gotta hang on for the ride, man. Do the best you can, and like you said, all the bumps you hit in the past prepare you for the next ones you're gonna hit.
100%. It's funny because I don't remember where I saw it, but in within the last little while, month or so, someone was talking about this concept and used like the video game analogy, and they referenced Mario, and they're like, when you are on level 1, level 10 seems daunting, but when you're on level 10, level 1 is like a joke, but level 35 is still ridiculous. And
Yeah,
it just constantly keeps going, right?
yeah, dude, that's awesome.
Just to clarify for people watching, when you said AB, you were talking about AB testing, right?
Yeah, I just meant comparing your music to other people's music constantly while you're producing. That's the number one. Just like if you're gonna start recording, the only way because you can sit there as an amateur producer and produce something, and you can get to thinking it's sounding pretty good. You're like, hell yeah, this is kicking ass, and you're sharing it to all your friends, and they're like, this sounds like shit, dude, or like, and you get in your car and the song comes on after it, and you're like, whoa, that's not as good as I thought it was. So I mean, it's just that simple thing of, from the very beginning, if you're gonna produce songs, like find songs that you like to compare it to, that you like the quality of the way they sound, and you'll notice discrepancies in your own music, just as far as audio quality goes.
Yeah,
Obviously, it's good to listen to other music for inspiration and stuff too, but I just meant specifically in that instance, it's like, a technical screening to, you know, ratchet up the level of the quality of your productions.
makes perfect sense. Um, Final chapter of our chat. 2015, you join Hinder officially as the lead vocalist. So we're now talking about a decade of you fronting the band. Congrats, by the way.
Thank
That's
you.
that's
Thank you
pretty
so
rad.
much.
I guess two-part question, going back to what I was talking about earlier, is how did it feel being on the opposite end of the lead singer stepping role? Now you're actually stepping in for someone versus stepping out for someone.
It was terrifying, to be honest. Like, I remember when the guys approached me about doing it, they're like, "Man, look, you've been singing all these demos and singing all this stuff in the studio for the past several years. Like, you could do it." And I was like, I don't know, guys, man. It's gonna be tomatoes for me. I just thought it was like, I don't have this big rock voice. I'd sound more like a pop singer or something.
Mhm.
Choir boy. I kind of had a high voice that didn't really have aggressive vocals down that much. I wouldn't think. Maybe I did a little bit. I don't know. It's a little blurry there. I tend to. I don't give myself very much credit as a vocalist because I've never really thought I was that great of one, and so I'm kind of always, in the back of my mind, it's hard to place where I might have possibly gotten better versus how I started out or how I evolved, because I kind of tend to think I can always do better at it. It's
Yeah.
not it certainly wasn't something that was that was my forte and came super easy to me. And so when they first asked me to do it, I was like, no way, man, this is like terrifying. But I had, let me just tell you this story real quick.
Go
Here's
for
how
it.
terrifying my induction into Hinder was. Like the first show, this was before I was in the band. When their first lead singer kind of crashed and burned when he was out on the road, and the band was kind of high and dry for a few shows. They had some that they it was just like a last minute thing. Um, I think Cody called me on a Tuesday. I was playing a gig here in town. I was actually singing and playing. I had this our rhythm guitar player now, who's in the band, the guy named Justin Shipley. He and I did this for like 10 years. We would play every Tuesday night, just kind of a song swap. You know, we play acoustic
Mhm.
guitars, and I was out there doing that gig, and he called me in the middle of our set, and he's like, "Dude, we're in a bind." He's like, "Is there any way you think you could fill in singing uh, on Friday and Saturday?" I was like, "What? You mean this Friday? This Saturday?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're coming back through town. We're gonna set up and rehearse tomorrow night and Thursday, and then we're gonna leave Friday and Saturday and do the shows." He's like, "Come on, you can do it." I was like, "Dude, there's no way I can prepare in that time." I was like, "First off," he's like, "Well, you know all the songs, because I mean, I was very familiar with all the songs, but I was like, that doesn't mean I can remember all the lyrics and all that." And he's like, "Just come out tomorrow night and see. Let's just run through the set and see how you can do." And so I was like, "Oh my God." I just went home and I remember I couldn't even hardly sleep. I was so nervous. I just laid awake almost all night and I thought about it. And I was just like, this is terrifying. What if I actually have to do this? And then, in the back of my mind, I was like, this isn't going to work. You know, they're either going to have to cancel these shows or they're going to have to get somebody else. But so I went there Wednesday night and we rehearsed, I think, 5 or 6 songs, and they were the ones that I absolutely knew, like Lips and Stoned and a couple others. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, you have to do this, dude. Please do it. You can do it. Like you sound, it's gonna work." And I was like, "What about all these other songs? Like I don't know the words to like Take It to the Limit and these songs, some of these other songs that I was less familiar with off the first two records."
Yeah.
And so they got me a teleprompter with lyrics on them because I was familiar with them enough to know the melodies. I just couldn't remember the things. But even beyond that, I was still terrified. I was like, I've never been on stage with just a microphone in my hands. I always played guitar. So I don't even know if I know how to do this. How do you be a front man just overnight? But that's what ended up happening. So I remember that night, Wednesday night, we ran through 5 or 6 songs, and then Mike was he was stressed out, so he got hammered. I remember he just passed out in front of the drum riser. So we didn't even get to finish learning the other. Gosh, man, I think they were doing 17, 18 song sets then. And so I was like, so that left Thursday. So I had one run through with the whole band. We ran over a couple of the songs multiple times, and we got on a tour bus, and I woke up the next day and had to open for Leonard Skinner. And then the following day, I had to open for 3 Days Grace, I think it was. And I got up there, and dude, I don't even know how to describe what that was like. It was terrifying, and I mean, it's just pure panic and dread, just imagining what could possibly happen. And come to find out, that's the worst thing you could do. Just lay awake imagining what a show might be like. I find these days that it's much better to just put blinders on and not think about it and just, you know. But I had to then because I had to prepare in some way. That's your brain goes into fix it mode. And I did it and it came off and it went pretty well somehow. I don't know how, but then I got those 2 shows done and they ended up they had another tour and they hired Jared. They had Jared come guest, Jared Weeks from Saving Abel. He did that X tour, and I was out on the road with him then. That was one of the that was actually the Candlebox tour, I think, where I met some of the Candlebox guys, which I was like, I was still starstruck at that time.
Mm.
But then when it kind of came down to the fact that they realized that they were moving on and getting a new singer, and they asked me to do it, it was just I I kind of talking in circles here. I kind of forgot your original question. I mean,
No, 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 we're good. That's
they asked me to do this, and I at this point in time, this was a whole lot different than just filling in. I'm like, you're asking me to be the front man, the new guy. Like, you, I've seen singers or bands change singers, and it's love and hate. It's just it's 50% like you know I felt like it was 50% welcome and 50% just like, oh hell no, not this guy. Who is this guy? Kind of thing. And so that was a really tough spot to be in for a long time, and I just kind of had to really ignore all the negativity for a while, and focus on the positivity. But there was so much overwhelming positive support, and uh, it was really hard to get my legs to become a touring front man. I remember, it kind of just worked out in my favor where like the first time we went out, it was only for like 3 days. And then the next time we went out was for like a week. And then the next time it was like 2 weeks. And then I had a little break. And then I finally worked up to my whole first, month long tour or something. And uh, I think just through that process, I don't know. I, I don't even know how I figured it out. Dude. I just learned how to do it, I guess. I didn't have a choice. I was up there in front of people, and you either got to fold or man or get it done. And like, I'm not a real big fan of folding, so
I wanted to ask about lessons you've learned as a musician and blah blah blah, but you've kind of given me so much amazing stuff within that response alone. When opportunity knocks, you answer, and ultimately, in life, we sink or swim, to use
yeah,
your term just now. And it's important for people out there, whether they're musicians or not, to know that if you're being challenged, that's okay. You have a choice to give in or get over it. And usually, if something's difficult, it's because it's going to lead to that expansion that we talked about, right? Like I learned this past year that even though maybe I've already known this, I didn't really put it into my mind. You can't have construction without destruction. That
yeah, man.
oftentimes you have to get ruined before you can build up
I love
better
that.
and stronger.
I think so too, man. And you know, as terrifying as that was, I realized very quickly that. Well, I mean, number one, I just love the Hinder guys. Like, I love the camp. It's like, it's a wonderful group of people to work with. And I realized very quickly, I mean, I was already really good friends with him, and I'd been out on the road. I was kind of part of the family already. And so I quickly, after I got over the fear of actually being a front man, I realized that it was something that I really wanted. I want to do this. So I had the drive, though, the desire to not fail, you
Yeah.
know? So I worked really hard, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be a front man now. That's my new job, you know? And that's kind of a fun thing that happened to me along my career because, like I said, I'd never thought about being a front man, and but once I realized that was happening, it became something that I became obsessed with wanting to be better at, and I wanted to. I started studying front men in a way that I never had before, and my some of my favorites like Sammy Hagar and Bon Scott. I mean, I you just watch these guys and see how they, Sammy Hagar's just he's so great. He's so comfortable on stage, and always loved how he just would kind of walk around and fist bump and flirt with people. Uh, that's kind of my style as a front man. I'm not there like with some ego, like, hey, look at me, I'm a singer, and some people are just that. They're just so good that it's like they just stand up there and sing, and that's all you do. You go watch them and you're blown away. But I knew right out of the gate that nobody was going to come and stand and be blown away by my singing skills, right? Yeah, I can sing good and I could get the job done, but there's got to be more to it for me.
Yeah.
I have to learn how to be an entertainer as well as also along this process become a better singer. and challenge myself and get some new tools under my belts, as a vocalist. And so once I got my legs in there, I settled in, and it felt like something I wanted to do, and that made it easier, because I was motivated. Just kind of like when producing took off for me, it was that same thing. Like I realized I caught the desire for it,
Mm,
because without the desire, man, it's really hard to do those things. But
yeah.
with it,
I wanna kind of wrap up, and I want to ask you about the band's new album. But before that, you talked just now about being a singer, and when you're a front man, it's actually a performer, right? There's more to the job than just singing. Um, you then also shared a story about Roadrunner and go away and figure out your vibe and your style because you guys are all over the place. How do you? I love to use the word authenticity, not just on this podcast, but in life. Like, how did you authentically find your style, your vibe, your presentation of self in front of the crowd without it being like fake?
I you know I just kind of did whatever came natural to me, and that is what I became. I don't think I put a lot of thought into it. I mean, I knew right out of the gate somehow, like I said, probably from watching somebody like Sammy Hagar, walk around. I knew that I wanted to engage with people. For me, it's more comfortable. I feel more comfortable on stage, this is a lot different for a lot of people. I've talked to so many singers about this, so many performers. A lot of people, it scares them to death to just look people in the eye, when you're on stage. But that actually makes me more comfortable. If I can connect with someone and know that they're connecting with me, I feel like they like me more, and that eases my self-conscious nature, to that little voice in the back of your head that's telling you that you suck, and like these people don't like you, and you're doing terrible at this. If I can distract myself with just having a good time, and fist bumping and making people smile and engaging with them, and talking directly to them, I think that kind of came natural to me, for the simple fact that I was trying to relieve some of the stress of the situation, of being uncomfortable on stage, being a
Mm,
front man for the first time. It was a very difficult thing to get get comfortable with, and so my natural tendency was to to treat it less seriously, like we're all just here having fun, and by doing that, I was able to control my own anxiety over the situation, and I think that just kind of blossomed into, you know, who I am as a front man. Is that person that's just there to have a good time with everybody. So nobody's nervous. Like, you ain't gotta worry, man. This is all cool. We're all gonna have fun. We're gonna have some drinks. We're all gonna scream and yell, and everybody's gonna go home happy.
nice. Put a little effort into it or a little thought into it, but then just feel
Hmm.
feel the rest of it. Makes sense. Um, 10 years, like we said earlier, as the vocalist, as the frontman of the band, and you just now released Back to Life, seventh studio album. Um, I'm not going to ask you how it feels and all that garbage that everyone is asking you, but what do you have going forward? You're just going to tour your butt off and play shows until you guys decide to write more? Is that the general flow?
Yeah, man. We have we got our CD release coming up on the 24th this weekend in Vegas, and then we're doing weekends in June, every weekend in June, and then we're full on, man. We're going back out full on in July, and probably August, and then again probably later on in the year. We're gonna be really busy this year, uh, just playing shows, man. Getting out there and trying to play some new music, and having a good time. And try to support this record. I mean, uh, I feel like we went through a phase where we were unhappy with our writing and stuff, our direction, right around the rain. That record we were, not that I'm unhappy with that record. We had different focus at that time. And then quickly after that, we went through another period of time where we actually wrote a whole entire record and then we shelved it because we
Mm,
didn't feel like it was us. We were trying to go in a direction that we didn't end up liking. And we kind of kind of felt uninspired for a while. And so, sometimes for me, when I'm uninspired, all I got to do is just go do something else for a little while and come back to it, with a renewed approach and a fresh palette of ideas. And COVID was kind of a blessing in that regard. It knocked everybody down and sent everybody home. And, I kind of just started doing some other things to distract myself. I put together a guitar band, and I've always wanted to do guitar shred. I love it. It's so much fun to do. And so I did that for a while. And then when I came back to Hinder, and Cody had taken some time off, he had done some different things. He had done some writing on his own. And when we came back together for this record, it it just it just felt like we had gotten to a new point, and everything felt fresh, and the record felt ended up feeling fresh and good, and we felt really good about all the songs. So I think I'm most excited about what's coming up for the band, just for the simple fact that we're really happy with the record, and we can't wait to get out and support it and see what people think.
Back to life.
Back to life, man. Here we are, baby.
Uh, Thank you so much for chatting with me, Marshall. It's been such a
Dude,
amazing chat. Appreciate you being on the Heart Dealer podcast, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Vancouver whenever you guys roll through.
absolutely, man. Yeah, let's have a scotch.
That sounds. I'm going to hold you to that. That sounds amazing.
Dude,
Uh,
and what I just want to say thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, dude.